S/4HANA practice at TCS. And I have over 25 years experience doing SAP implementations. And so this is a very near and dear topic to my heart. We are going to kick off with ARNE, we're going to have ARNE SCHMIDTHALS from SAP. He is the global lead of S/4HANA Customer Care and the Regional Implementation Group, or RIG. And he will be sharing how that program has supported more than 900 customers on their journey to S/4HANA. They have published many blogs and courses sharing those learnings, and he's going to be taking through and sharing with us some of his thoughts. We also have with us today Mukul Agrawal. He is the head of ERP at Vistaprint, a Simpris business. As a proven leader in information technology with over 20 years experience in the field, Mukul has been helping customers of companies grow their technology capabilities and is responsible for heading their global SAP S/4HANA and its ecosystem for Vistaprint. We also have with us today Munish Agrawal. He's a senior technology manager for global supply chain at Vistaprint. He's leading a team that supports 7 manufacturing plants globally and has over 20 years experience in supply chain, project management, and technology management. We also have with us today Matthew Therian. He's a solution architect and technology manager with Vistaprint with over 17 years of experience in SAP implementations. His responsibilities include SAP solutions, e-commerce integration, and reporting solutions in finance and sales. We will have with us today Prashant Shigor, the global head of the TCS SAP practice. He's a keen interest in leveraging the potential of digital to transform enterprises and engages with CIOs extensively across various industries, defining roadmaps and shaping strategies. With over 25 years in this industry, he has led global teams with focus on innovation and delivering business outcomes. We also have today Parthiv Shah. He's the global head of SAP Sales and Solutions, Go-to-Market, and Sub-Practices. He's part of the TCS SAP leadership team and is responsible for the European SAP practice and Global SAP Solutions organization. He has over 25 years experience and has deep knowledge across business and IT with focus on digital strategy, cloud architecture, and SAP-led transformation and delivery. We also have with us today Sushant Wadia, who is the global head of our EAS SAP COE practice. EAS is our Enterprise Application Services. And Sushant brings a rich experience across business roles and IT consulting spanning 21 years. He has played key roles in transformation programs and M&A programs. In his role in the COE, he is responsible for shaping TCS Crystallis offering and creating other innovative solutions and offerings for the market. Our agenda for today, we'll begin with a keynote address from Prashant Shigor, with sharing his thoughts on S/4HANA conversion. Then we will hear from ARNE on how to prepare for a successful implementation and how SAP's customer care can support projects and shared lessons learned. Then we will have some time with Parthiv Shah, who will take us through trends and drivers for conversion-based approach, and following that with a panel discussion from our Vistaprint guests as well as Parthiv Shah. And finally, Sushant will share his COE perspective, and then we will wrap up with Q&A and close the session. Okay. Thank you for joining us, and we'll now start the session. I'm going to hand over to Prashant Shigor, please.
Yeah, listen, I will take this. This is Parthiv. Welcome everyone to this session. And first of all, I hope everybody is doing safe. On behalf of TCS and our management, it is my pleasure to welcome all of you to this session, and we hope we have an engaging session. We have planned this to be a very focused session around experience sharing, point of view from practitioners, and we hope it will be enriching for all of you. First of all, when we talk about the digital transformations, the technologies that today shape businesses, and especially as the world hopes to exit 2020 and start 2021 with hopefully some solutions in mind for the pandemic, we have already realized that businesses, as we thought, would even get disrupted further. There are now significant shifts in how business will potentially get done, how businesses will need to react to the needs of the ecosystem, how businesses will need to measure experiences of stakeholders in the ecosystem in a very different way, and how technology will need to deliver solutions at a much rapid pace to make sure that the value that businesses get from the time to market is exponentially improved. When we looked at all of these, and we look, of course, at the role of a digital core, the centerpiece of an enterprise is backbone, the ERP, in this case SAP, undergoing a tremendous amount of shift in terms of both its value and in terms of the foundation that it will provide for organizations to innovate. With that in mind, we thought that it would be great for us to have these practitioners to be a part of this session. Though the session is focused and themed around conversion, I think all of us know, both from the business and industry, our customers, all of you, as well as my other colleagues, that this is only a step towards an eventual journey where business wants to make sure that it acquires capabilities that will make it successful in the future. We have therefore made sure that the session is focused not only around conversions and aspects which are critical for that, but also the other considerations and the other dimensions that are equally important, whether it is the cloud and the adoption of cloud, whether it is innovations, enhancements, capabilities that business needs, not only from the ERP, but from the edge applications. We will talk a lot about that as well. It is my pleasure with this to take the first session. ARNE, thank you very much for taking the time off, and request you to start the session.
Okay, hello everybody. Can you hear me and can you see me? And can you see my screen? Hello, can you hear me?
Just kicked in.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, so I think you see the preview slide, right? Not the correct one. Let me just change that real quick. Is that better?
Yes.
Excellent. Good. Welcome from my side. My name is ARNE SCHMIDTHALS. I'm with SAP and I'm in charge of the S/4HANA Customer Care and Regional Implementation Group. And yeah, I will share a little bit what this is, what we do, and how also you can benefit from our offerings moving forward. I've prepared 3 sections here in my presentation. The first one is to explain what we do and how we can help you. The next one is on the transition to S/4HANA, and I will explain the different options and also pros and cons of the different approaches. And I will conclude with the lessons learned and immediate next steps or things that you can do right away in your transition journey over to S/4HANA. Let me start with the first chapter. How can S/4HANA Customer Care and the Regional Implementation Group help you? We are a team of more than 100 S/4HANA experts, and we are part of the SAP development organization. So that is important to understand, because we are not part of services, not part of consulting, but actually we are complementing services and consulting offerings, be it from SAP or be it from TCS or any other partner. So it's not kind of replacing consulting. It is really complementing the consulting expertise with a direct connection into the SAP development organization. We help our customers to successfully implement S/4HANA. And the other part is that we take the learnings out of these engagements to prepare knowledge assets like blogs, like OpenSAP classes, to make the knowledge available with future customers and organizations that are still ahead of their journey to S/4HANA. We have 3 main offerings available, and I would like to quickly share with you what these offerings are and give you some positioning in which phase of the life cycle they would be applicable, so that you can decide what is now an interesting and relevant offering for you. All of these offerings have in common that they are free of charge, that they are open to all customers, and that they are entirely remotely. So this is not being on site. This is, and by the way, this is independent of COVID-19. This has always been a remote setup, and obviously it fits nicely into the current environment. The offering to the left here, the 10 Steps to S/4HANA Bootcamp for Customers. This is a bootcamp, a hands-on bootcamp running for 4 weeks. And that is interesting for those of you that are considering a system conversion. You will receive a sandbox system that includes a little bit of everything. So there's some custom code in there, obviously not too much, because we want you to be successful in these 4 weeks. There is business partner conversion in there. So all the topics that you will need to go through in your own conversion project at a later point in time. And you have the possibility hands-on to go through the activities that are required to transition over. You will be joining as a team from your organization. We need, like in a regular project, we need a basis person, somebody that is familiar with the SUM tool, with migration to HANA, gateway configuration, and you see the main tasks specified here on the slide. We need an ABAP person, a developer that is able to check custom code, simplification items. We need a finance person and a logistics person. You see the expected hours of commitment mentioned here on the slide. The basis person with 45 hours in these 4 weeks is the person that is required most. Like in a regular conversion project, there are a number of basis tasks. So you are joining as a team. There are sessions, steps, 10 steps, as the name suggests. And each of these steps is introduced by a 2-hour virtual meeting that introduces the topic and explains what needs to be done. For example, on step 4, there is the finance topic, and you will learn what needs to be done on the finance side. In the course of this 1 month, you will then hands-on convert the ERP 6 and Hands Pack 6 system mentioned here on the left side, running on MS SQL, and transition that over to S/4HANA 1909. So a complete run through hands-on, and that will give you quite a good understanding of the actual tasks required also in your future conversion project. So as said, this is an offering relevant for customers considering a system conversion. If you decide or have already decided to go for a re-implementation, a new implementation, then this is not a good offering because, well, those technical hands-on tasks would not be applicable for you in your future project. Our flagship offering is the Customer Care Program, which is an offering throughout the entire Go Live project. It assumes a regular interaction between our team, the customer care team, and you and the implementation partner on a regular basis. Typically, there's a weekly call to exchange the status, to discuss open topics, and think of this as a possibility to remove roadblocks in your project. That might be an incident that doesn't get sufficient traction, or an incident that is pushed from one SAP organization to the other. The technology side saying it's not a technology problem, the application side saying it's not an application problem. And as we understand your project context, understand where you're coming from, we can easily reach out to the processor or even to several people and then bring them together, explain where you're coming from, what your actual requirement is, and with that help to accelerate the resolution of an incident. We have a capacity to support roughly 200 concurrent projects globally, meaning this is only a small subset of all the several thousand projects that are currently running. And for those projects that we are accepting, we are assigning 2 individuals, a so-called project coach and a development angel. The project coach being more the generalist type of person, making sure that there is a regular interaction, that there's follow-up to open items, and that there is just a good collaboration happening. The development angel is a product expert, knowing one area of S/4HANA in and out, for example, the finance area. And obviously, if a finance question comes up in the discussion, that would be a good match because you have the finance person assigned. If that is a question from another application area, this would work in a way that the development angel reaches out to his or her peers covering the other application areas, either come back with a reply or pulling in that other person into a quick call with you and your consulting partner so that the issue can be discussed. We are currently accepting all installed base customers that are implementing the 2020 release, meaning the latest release that was released in October this year, regardless if this is a new implementation, if this is a system conversion, and also regardless if this is in an on-prem or in a cloud context. The interaction typically happens between project coach and development angel on SAP side and customer partner and partner on the other side. Typically, there is a weekly call. Sometimes it's every 2 weeks. The important thing is that there's a regular interaction and that this is not considered an on-call offering that you contact us when something went wrong, but rather that we try to jointly avoid problems when they come up and that we can share learnings from other projects and help you move into the right direction before it is too late. The effort that is planned is relatively lean. We are planning with 4 to 8 hours per week, meaning we will not be able, and we do not have the intention, as mentioned before, to replace the consulting work. It is one additional way to get things tackled. I mentioned incidents as an example before. Another example would be roadmap type of questions. If you run into a question, if a future release or support package or feature pack will bring the required functionality, the roadmap information might be too high level. And with this connection into the SAP development organization, we will be able to help you identify if the functionality that's coming up with the future release or feature pack is resolving your actual requirement. And finally, the 5 steps to Fiori bootcamp, that is more targeted at customers during a project or even after a go-live project. So for those of you that are already on S/4HANA, that have not invested too much into Fiori, into the new UX, user interface paradigm, this 2-week remote bootcamp can help, again, hands-on to address the Fiori topic, help you set this up in a sandbox system. And again, you would be joining as a team covering technology and basis, application and development. And in the course of 2 weeks and these 5 steps, you will go through the required activities to set up Fiori in your own sandbox system, which brings the big advantage that you will keep this and you will be able to continue to explore and expand over time. The 5 steps are distributed in a way that every second day there is a session, which then leaves you roughly 16 hours to complete the work package before the next session kicks in. So this is a quick introduction, the 3 main offerings, 2 bootcamps and the customer care program, all of them free of charge, all of them open to all customers and all of them entirely remotely. Let me then continue with my next chapter here, how to transition to S/4HANA. You might have seen that slide before that visualizes the different transition options over to S/4HANA. We have 3 transition options available. 2 of them, these are the ones that are in this orange box. system conversion, and new implementation, these are the kind of out-of-the-box transition options. Selective data transition is more tool-based approach where experts from SAP or specialized partners use this toolbox to do very sophisticated activities like time slicing information, like consolidating systems, like splitting company codes. So those kind of things that require expert knowledge and expert tools. But this is the rare exception. The majority of all projects, think of this like 95% of all projects do a system conversion or new implementation. System conversion means that the entire system, including everything that's included, is brought to S/4HANA. Think of this like an upgrade. It is more than an upgrade, but it's like an upgrade, taking the entire system and bringing that over. That means it is not possible to do this company code by company code or finance first, logistics later, or one country first following by another country. It is always the entire system, and everything that's in the ERP system is coming over to S/4HANA. The new implementation is starting from scratch, and you would then treat the ERP system as a legacy system, doing an initial data load with master data and open items. You would typically not bring over any historical data, but really only the master data and the open items that are still required in the new context. Of course, the question is, should you do the one thing, the other thing, what is better? And if we look at our customers so far, and I mentioned before, we supported more than 900 projects so far, so we see roughly 50-50 share between new implementation and system conversion. Meaning there is no right and wrong, and there is no better or worse. It really depends. And before I take you through some criteria that influences the decision, if you should rather go left or right, I just wanted to reiterate and make sure that you are all aware that the direct one-step system conversion is supported and feasible from any ERP6 system on any database directly over to S/4HANA. It is not required to be on any enhancement pack level. It is not required to be on the HANA database. Direct system conversion, feasible and recommended from any ERP6 system over to S/4HANA. Now, as promised, what are criteria that influence the decision? System conversion versus new implementation. The first one I named future readiness, and what I mean with that is, the ability of your current system to support not only today's but also future and anticipated future requirements in the area of master data and org structures. I mentioned master data and org structures specifically because these are the two areas that can hardly be changed in the running environment. As there is so much dependent data, org data, master data, there are so many documents that it is very hard or even impossible to change that in a running system. Therefore, if you are seeking to fundamentally redesign your master data and org structures, that might be a good indicator that a re-implementation, meaning a new implementation, is likely the better way forward. The second thing is current system perception. If you consider your current system as a key asset, you likely want to go for a system conversion. And what I mean with that is, consider you are acquiring a new company, you are going into a new country, you are building a new warehouse that should be integrated into your existing ERP system. Is that something that you know how to do? Or is that something where you are kind of scared that something might break, that there is some integration to other systems that's no longer working and those kind of things? So if you consider this easy and you have done that before, well, system conversion is likely the way to go. If, on the other hand, you are scared that something might break, then maybe a new implementation is the better way forward. Data quality. The better the data quality is, the easier is the system conversion, as there are a number of data conversion activities happening, all tools supported, but there are validations happening. And the better the data quality is, the easier it will be to convert, and otherwise maybe a re-implementation is the better way forward. Custom code is not so much about the amount of custom code, it is more, again, how much it is under control. Well-maintained custom code can easily be converted over, And if this is outdated and you no longer know what the code really does, if you don't have proper documentation and the people that originally developed it are no longer with the company, well, maybe then it is good to start with a fresh installation and rather go for a new implementation. Release level, I mentioned that before. That is in particular relevant if you have a very old system, meaning below ERP 6.0, then a system conversion is not supported, a direct one-step system conversion, and doing an upgrade followed by system conversion is hardly ever the right way forward, meaning if you run on R3 Enterprise 4.6c, those kind of release levels, very likely the re-implementation is the way for you to go. Finally, historical data. I mentioned before with the system conversion, everything comes over, meaning also historical data coming over. And therefore, if you go for a system conversion, all the historical data will come over. If, on the other hand, you go for a new implementation, well, then you do not have the historical data coming over and just have the open items and master data. You might realize that it's not that black and white, and you might fall into the left side or the right side for some of the categories, and then again into the other side for some other categories. So therefore, I'm not suggesting that this is an easy decision. I hope still that this gives you some structure for your own discussion and decision, what is best in your specific environment. That takes me to my last chapter here, what are lessons learned and recommended immediate next steps. The first recommendation is very generic and actually independent. If you go for a system conversion, new implementation, or just do an upgrade, it is always a good idea to regularly review and clean up custom code. Custom code that is no longer in the system is the best way to avoid efforts. Therefore, it is highly recommended that you establish, if not already done, a common practice to look at custom code, outdated custom code, or no longer used custom code, and clean it up and get rid of this. Among the many tools that SAP provides, the readiness check is the one that I really would like to highlight here. For those of you that are not familiar with the readiness check, that is a tool that, well, a node that you implement into your existing ERP system, in particular on the productive system, and that pulls usage data from your ERP productive system, visualizes that in a cockpit type of UI, and gives you a lot of information on your upcoming S/4HANA project. For example, on database sizes, for example, on add-ons that might or might not be available, on recommended Fiori apps that can be used. So a lot of things that all come for free and very easy, and it gives you fast and early insights that should help you with the S/4HANA project. One thing that also is provided with the readiness check, and that is my next item here, are the simplification items. Simplification items are the functional changes between ERP and S/4HANA. Of course, it is important for you to understand what kind of functionalities are changing with S/4HANA. Where do you need to move to a successor solution, for example? Typically, most of the simplification items are not relevant for you, but you obviously want to find out which of these changes are affecting you. And again, the readiness check is the tool that will precisely tell you, based on your usage information, which of the functionalities that you are using are affected, and therefore highly recommended to do the readiness check, and in particular, check out the simplification items that are relevant for you. I would also recommend to decide on the transition approach early on, meaning system conversion or new implementation, as a couple of follow-on activities really depend on the transition approach. For example, the customer vendor integration topic is something that is recommended to be done as a pre-project. You might know that with S/4HANA, SAP introduced the business partner object, succeeding the customer and vendor object, and there's a transition required from the old data structure to the new ones. And that is something that is recommended to be done as a pre-project already on the ERP system. Of course, it's only recommended if you go for a system conversion, because there is no sense in converting the data in the ERP system that you're about to retire retire if you go for a new implementation approach. Another thing we strongly recommend is to look into Fiori. There might be a temptation to continue only with SAP GUI, in particular if you're running out of time and all your buffer time is consumed. Experience shows that it is much easier to expand the Fiori usage in the second phase versus starting completely from scratch. Unfortunately, there are some organizations that never get to the second phase that we were planning for because there is so much operational and day-to-day tasks coming up. And therefore, we highly recommend to look into Fiori quick wins, also because basically all of the value that comes with S/4HANA is tied to Fiori. If you skip Fiori and continue with SAP GUI, you will likely use the system in a very much the same way as you use it with your current ERP environment, and then you spend a lot of time, energy, money to convert into a new environment that you use more or less in the same way as you did before. So therefore, with Fiori, you have the starting point to really leverage the business value that you were looking for when you decided to go for S/4HANA. Finally, I want to highlight that there are many enablement options available, OpenSAP, but also blocks. Among the many OpenSAP courses, I would like to highlight the ones that have been produced by us, by Customer Care and Regional Implementation Group. We have a nice tradition to publish a yearly course. This year's course is called Guide Your SAP S/4HANA Project to Success. It was launched in September 2020. You will get the slides so you can check it out, but you can of course also go to OpenSAP and search for it. The good thing with the OpenSAP courses is that it is structured into 15 to 20-minute long chapters. And if you're interested in a certain topic, there is no need to attend the entire course. You can just pick the topic that is specifically relevant for you. I also want to highlight, and certainly not go through this one by one, I just want to highlight the many blogs that have been prepared by our experts documenting our learnings from previous engagements, and you see that some of them are fairly generic and others are very specific. The good thing with these blogs is that they will be found when you Google for them. So if you are interested, that's my favorite example, Nota Fiscal for intercompany stock and transit movements between different legal entities within Brazil. Obviously, that's a very narrow and very specific topic, and likely 99% of you are not interested in that. But if you are, hopefully you Google for it, because then you will find this blog that helps you understand how other customers have successfully implemented this. Again, slides will be shared, so you will find all the links. But again, the main use case is Google for it, and then you will find the blogs among other information that hopefully will help you then to resolve a certain question and issue that you have at hand. That is all I wanted to share. I thank you for your participation, and with that, I would like to hand back. Thank you.
Thank you, Arne, for those insights. I'm looking through, I don't see too many questions here. I did have one. I was wondering if you could share maybe your perspective of what might make for a successful implementation, right? So what are some of the key challenges or the key challenge in doing the conversion approach that you found?
Well, in any S/4HANA project, I guess a key success criteria is to properly plan and structure the project. A key topic is to have good decision making. In particular, if you want to get rid of custom code, if you want to get rid of source code modifications, the key thing is that you plan carefully and that you have a good process to approve those kind of source code modifications. So therefore, having a clear project setup is an important thing, which applies to basically all projects. For system conversions, I would like to recommend, as I mentioned before, to run the readiness check, because the readiness check really is the tool that gives you insights, easy insights into all kind of dimensions, and there specifically the simplification items, which are the functional changes that you need to look into.
Great, thank you for that. I know a lot of our clients, a lot of projects that I've worked on, the biggest challenge is dealing with that custom code, right? So the more highly customized the solution, the older the solution, right, the more challenging that becomes. So
Absolutely.
thank you for that. So now I'd like to turn this over to Parthiv Shah, who's going to share with us trends and drivers in the conversion and what we're seeing out in the marketplace. So Parthiv, over to you, please.
Thank you, Alison, and I hope my screen is visible. Thank you, Arne, again. And you know,
Parthiv, you're on mute.
am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yeah.
You are now.
So I'm not going to go through all of the points over here. I want to talk a bit about, what are the top trends that drive what some of my colleagues and I call as future of the future ERP. I think, 2 or 3 out of these which are creating a significant amount of influence. The first one, of course, is the complete shift of business models for some of the industries, as well as for some others where business models are not shifting, at least a significant amount of influence, even though it sounds a cliche of digital technologies on how business is conducted. Customer centricity, when I started the session, I mentioned about that. A significant amount of rethink or reimagination of how business is conducted is driven by the number of touch points, the number of channels, and the amount of influence and choice that our customers have, and we need to make sure that at every single touch point of our customers, we drive a very consistent and a very top level experience. I think beyond customers, every part of an organization and enterprise's ecosystem, the value chain in which we operate, is critical, and it is not necessary only to drive that experience with our customers, whether it is employees, which are top assets for any enterprise, whether it is our partners with whom we do business, who are our suppliers, or the broader ecosystem. Each one of them is important, and the enterprise backbone and technologies need to support that. We see in a number of industries M&As picking up significantly, and while these M&As are driven with very clear objectives, synergies, and benefits intended for the organization and for the stakeholders, I think for them, as well as in general, for all these programs, the time to market vis-a-vis the investment that is put in is critical. I think CEOs and CFOs expect a significant amount of benefits to start flowing in as early as possible, and not like the classical way where one needs to wait for years for those benefits to flow in. I think 2 or 3 out of the considerations that I'll pick up. First of all, whether you go for a conversion or a greenfield, the whole concept of relooking at the core, shrinking that core to what is bare minimum to run the enterprise, but looking at what other cloud solutions are available that can be deployed. I'll talk a bit about that in a moment, but that's becoming critical. Cloud adoption, again, as customers, whether they do a greenfield, new system implementation, as Arne mentioned, or a conversion, what benefits and how much acceleration can the adoption of cloud give, not only for the current programs, but in general, post-conversion is becoming critical. Of course, we talked about, I think Arne talked about Fiori. In general, I call it user experience. And apart from Fiori, apart from these solutions, what makes the ERP system more intelligent? What kind of process automation capabilities does S/4HANA or any other solutions on top of it offer? What machine learning capabilities need to be leveraged to make sure that we get the right benefits out of the ERP become critical.
You're back on mute, Parthiv.
Thank you. Irrespective of whether we go for a conversion or for a reimplementation, organizations want to, and in my opinion, should relook at what functionality and what capabilities do they want to retain in the ERP. There are a number of innovations, there are a number of capabilities that SAP offers. Also, other solution providers offer, which are endorsed products, which are add-on products from SAP's partners, which add tremendous capabilities depending on where your businesses are moving. Businesses which are significantly, let's say, impacted and influenced by servitization, by a lot of service-based models, want to move out of very rudimentary, heavily customized CPQ functionality and want to look at capabilities that new solutions like a Calidus or other applications can offer, and therefore move that functionality and make the ERP more leaner. And there are a number of such examples, whether it is in the whole service management aspects, whether it is related to how project-based businesses run. All of these influence the overall decision-making, the end state that organizations decide before they start such programs. Again, some lessons learned as we approach these programs, some guidelines based on the experiences that some of our customers and we have seen. I'll call out 2 or 3 of them. I think the first one is obviously an early assessment of what simplification options can you gain from while you initiate conversion programs is important. There are a number of low-hanging fruits. There are a number of must-have innovations that businesses can and should adopt as you embark on your S/4HANA journeys with a conversion approach. It is, I would say, a mistake if business is not involved thinking it's a conversion approach. It is very important to make sure that business is involved upfront and they understand the impact and they are able to also be a party to a lot of decision making. The second part is the potential of cloud, the adoption of cloud, and whether there is an ability to also accelerate your decisions on potential cloud adoption, if possible in one step or otherwise, of course, in a phased manner as these programs are undertaken. I guess one of the foremost topics that is of interest is around downtime and business continuity. We will talk a bit more about it, but obviously, this is a critical aspect of consideration. A lot of proof of concepts. I think some of the offerings that ARNE mentioned are very relevant to do early proof of concepts, early simulations to make sure that we secure business continuity. Data and the need for the exact amount of data, the real value out of data is of course critical. And at the same time, I think looking at peripheral systems, looking at interfacing systems, which might also need its own adaptations, is critical. With that, I want to hand it back to Alison, and we would like to get into a discussion with Mukul and team. Alison, back to you.
Thank you, Parthiv, and thank you for that. I would like to just kind of go back. Arnie, there are a few questions that have been posted now, if we can maybe cover those before we go into the panel discussion. Arnie, are you still there or on mute?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great. So one of the questions we had was if there is an issue log from conversion programs available or published.
I'm not entirely sure what is meant with issue log. I mean, the learnings that we have out of these engagements, this is what I mentioned before with the blogs. So where we describe how a certain aspect has been addressed. I'm not sure exactly if this is what is behind that question. So maybe that person could reiterate and explain a little more.
Okay. Great. The next question that we have are regarding the timelines for a new implementation, and are there any recommended timelines, or what should folks expect?
Yeah, I mean, like so often, it really depends. There are some projects that are happening within few weeks, and there are others that take months. The average that we see is roughly around 11 months, 12 months maybe. But again, it depends very much how much changes you want to implement. If
Okay.
you have an existing ERP system and want to rework that and set up a new system, obviously you want to take sufficient time to really think through the org structures, the master data, because that is a unique point in time to really tackle those kind of changes.
Okay, thank you. And so another question here is about the how would they engage with the customer care program? How do they reach out, particularly for a customer in Canada?
Mm-hmm. Regardless if it's Canada or elsewhere, we have a generic inbox. The email address is mentioned on the slides that you will receive. Just send a mail to that inbox. There is like a short questionnaire asking for some project specification, timelines, contact person, starting release levels, and those kind of things, so that we can better understand what you're planning to do, and we will then get back to you.
Okay. Great. Just 2 more questions remaining. I think we can cover them. We've got a little bit of time. So regarding the 10-step boot camp, was the shared team structure, was that SI participation, or is that both SI and customer? Is that the full team?
It is primarily meant to be customer participation. We often, or sometimes at least, had the situation that some of the roles are filled or complemented by the partner. I mentioned the 4 kind of roles that need to be covered. What I didn't mention is that most organizations that were joining used the opportunity to really upskill and include a larger group of people. So the average number of participants per organization were somewhere around 15, but we also had customers that joined with 20 or 25 people. And that included sometimes the implementation partner, so that everybody had the experience to benefit and understand how this is all done.
Great, thank you. So we're going to close there. Any further questions that have been posted, we will address after these sessions. Now we're going to move into the panel discussion, and we have Parthiv, we have Mukul, Munish, and Matthew Tharian joining us from Vistaprint, and we're going to kind of run through the scenario that we had there and share customer experience. So Parthiv, if I can hand it over to you to moderate the panel discussion.
Thank you very much, Alison, again and again. A pleasure to welcome you, Mukul, Matt, and Munish on this session. Mukul, you heard some of the views shared by ARNE and the initial brief introduction from my side. It would be good for our audience today to know a bit more about Vistaprint and what triggers did you have when you initiated this journey, and what outcomes is Vistaprint targeting through this transformation.
Thank you, Parthiv, for the opportunity, and I hope everyone is doing well and staying safe. To start the discussion, I'd like to talk a little bit about what is Vistaprint and what it does. So if you think about small businesses, they have their needs to look credible in their marketing and promotional product needs, and Vistaprint services all those customers. We have over 17 million such customers which buy products from Vistaprint, design product, and use our design templates in order to look very credible with their customers in their marketing needs. These can be physical products, printed products, or it can be digital products like websites. So that is what Vistaprint does on the outset of what Vistaprint is. We have a great culture that allows us to empower each individual teams in order to move faster and furious on the projects that we want to do. And as ARNE pointed out, you have to think about technology in a very innovative way. If you do not adopt things like Fury, you're never going to be successful in using S4, because that is the real value. When we started this journey, it took us close to a year and a half to build the case for it, to justify the value, business case, and other aspects with our stakeholder leadership teams. And eventually we got to a decision that we have to do this for the platform, not for the software. We need a platform for our future that will enable the growth and sustain the pace of innovation that we as a company wants to move forward with. Just to cap the scope, we had one SAP ECC system globally, and we went to S4HANA 1809 Brownfield implementation. It was a one-step conversion. We changed our data centers, moved into HEC HANA Enterprise Cloud at the same time, as well as upgraded the database and application. So it was a one-step conversion, global conversion. It takes an army to do that conversion successfully, and it took us a lot of effort in planning and practice. My two things that I would thank ARNE and his team as well, because their teams and a lot of other SAP teams and TCS teams were crucial to the project, and they all helped us to be successful. S4 being still relatively new product, while it's not new, but it is relatively new for customers who are bigger and bigger and bigger. So it takes a lot of coordination with SAP teams as well in order to unblock us where there are some product shortcomings and things like those. So SAP team's been helpful for that. One thing that I would say is when we started this journey, we were still deciding, and the leadership was asking questions about to a greenfield versus brownfield, and we had to look at time to market. What is the right thing to do? What do we have in our current system? The customizations, the custom code that we have in our system, is that good to port into the new system? What is the technical debt that we have in our system? And a lot of those inputs allowed us to decide a brownfield implementation, because time to market is important for us. If we embark on a 3-year program to start and upgrade ECC to S4, the requirements that you get from a stakeholder in month 1 is not the same that you end with the program on the month 36. So our goal was to reduce the duration of the project as much as possible, to lift and shift and identify some strong value drivers that we're delivering to our stakeholders as part of the first launch, and then iteratively and incrementally deliver more and more value. I'll give you one example, and I'll pass on the opportunity for Matt to talk about his experience as well. In case of Fury, when we went live in April 2020, we had about 50 applications that were live for our stakeholders. And since April, it's been, 10 months, not even 10 months, 9 months, we have rolled out another 200 applications. We have 250 apps by now. And the phase 2 and the follow-on work is happening, and that is only possible if we have the right stakeholders and the right commitment from our business partners and technology teams to make that happen. Rather than investing in a program in phase 1 to make it a 12-month program, we decided we are going to do this in 7 months. We are going to convert the system, and so that we deliver the value and then add more and more feature set based on the requirements that are more real and more true at the time. So what has changed in COVID? How has that impacted? What are the business requirements shaping up because of COVID? All of those things allowed us to adapt and grow and change real time in the scenario. So said that, I want to pass this on to Matt as well, because he's a technology architect in Vistaprint and also technology manager. He has a very good perspective that he would like to share as well on the business value drivers and what value do our stakeholders get out of these projects like this. So over to you, Matt.
Sure. Thanks, Mukul. And I think ARNE did a great job kind of laying out the considerations of conversion versus new implementation. I think that that's important. And Mukul's, talking about kind of time to market, and that was, probably the biggest consideration for us to move, through that conversion process and be able to start unlocking some of these innovative tools. If you look at how we're using the new tooling that we got with the S4 implementation, the first thing was looking at the Fiori landscape. We really wanted to focus in on just applications that we really needed to enable that, added value to processes. So that was one. So new innovation areas, and look at rolling some of those out early. Look at getting some self-service reporting, just very basic, and step our toe in the water as far as building CDS views and start to make sure that we understand the core capabilities that S4 brings. And that was huge for our our system, because we have billions of line items in our system. So it was it's a major issue for people to get information out of ECC. And so now with S4, we're able to execute reports and people are able to get to information really easily. And that was a major pain point for us previously. And we can roll out reporting views now really quickly, so that time to market is significantly faster now than it was. And then we've also, opened up the door to start looking at using SAC as a reporting tool, so that we can start unlocking more self-service analytics and people, from the business to be able to build reporting eventually at the end of the day. So that's one of the critical end goals that we have. As far as the project itself, the taking components of Fiori and doing small pieces of at least those core tools you're going to be moving to is super important as part of the project. It's important for a number of reasons. The first is the business, without seeing some of these technologies and getting a flavor of the new things that you're moving to, they don't know how to ask for requirements or ask for what they want. So they don't know what they want in the new world. So exposing them to a variety of tools and new things that you're going to be moving to is important, so that you can move quickly after the project's live and you now have those tools. So that's one critical piece. The other one is just internal knowledge and training, right? So developing CDS views, what are the best ways to do that, so that they can be used in the future from a variety of reporting tools or solutions. You can choose different, you can take Fiori use cases or SAC use cases, and they can be developed on a single reporting view. And so a lot of these things are important for the internal teams to get trained up and know how to move quickly after the project. And so we did find a lot of benefits of bringing forward some of those things into something that's a lift and shift we did really quickly, but we made sure that we hit those points. And so that's a critical piece to your internal skill development. And I think just one other thing that from the Fiori landscape, if you think about reporting and what we really get out of Fiori is really that insight to action. So we try to take cases where we're able to present information to people for them to make a decision and then be able to perform action on that really, really easily. And so they don't have to even go into a report if they know that there's there's 0 items for me to approve, or there's 5 items for me to improve. They don't even need to go into the application and be monitoring. Whereas previously they have to constantly be going to reports to understand whether they need to perform an action or not. And so that really is one of the critical pieces that I think you can bring forward in the Fiori landscape as well.
Yeah, thanks, Matthew. One of the key topics that our customers do have to consider is, the volume of database that they have and the considerations for downtime that I mentioned to make sure that there is business continuity. So, can you share something about the kind of complexity that you had over there, and what options did you have in your mind? What kind of criteria did you use to evaluate your options and arrive at decisions?
Sure. Yeah, definitely when you're looking at a conversion scenario, there's a few things that directly relate to downtime in a standard conversion. So if you don't use any additional services or solutions for that, the first is volume of data and database size. Just in general. So if you need to basically try to make your system as small as physically possible to shrink those downtimes. The other one is in the finance line item side. Like for instance, for us, our finance line items are significant, like I said, in the billions versus millions of line items. And so that directly does impact your conversion time frame, the duration of the conversion. So those are 2 of the biggest impacting items to that downtime piece. If you do have a significantly large system, I would say that definitely go through a downtime analysis with your implementation partner and SAP to understand exactly, based on their experience, what are those ranges and when are you up and when are you down, and evaluate whether you really need to look at services for near zero downtime or something that will cut down that that time to market or that the time for the conversion. That's definitely the big difference between greenfield and conversion, is that in the greenfield you have more flexibility around how you convert and enable that system. So it definitely is something that's a major consideration. I think another thing that, just to touch on what ARNE had talked about, that are kind of critical things to do now, you definitely need to start doing the readiness checks and start looking at those simplification items extremely early. And the reason is that there's a number of items on there, such as RAR conversion, the business partners conversion, fixed asset related items that you actually have to take care of before you start the project. Otherwise, from that point. So that's one thing that definitely paying attention to those items. And if you don't understand what one of those things is, make sure that you do, because it's critical to the project. So, and you may have to do a small, we called it phase 0, but an initial implementation prior to make sure that your system's ready to do conversion.
Thank you, Matt. Monisha, I want to come to you. And one of the areas which possibly went through a significant amount of shift in the last 10 months or so has been supply chain. So every notion, every concept, every thought about supply chain had to be rethought of for organizations. When you started this program, what were the needs of the supply chain function, and what kind of capabilities were you looking for from the platform, as Mukul shared from overall perspective?
Sure, Parthiv. Hope everybody can hear me, and hope everyone's doing well. One of the bad things about going last is that I think I've heard everything that I was going to talk about. So I'm glad you asked me the question, because I'm going to try and connect the dots from a supply chain and operations perspective, right? I mean, we talk about digital transformation. Here at Vistaprint, we've got 7 global manufacturing plants. So think about the scope. It's all over the world. It's 24/7, 2 very large plants, others smaller than the larger plants. So coming into the pandemic and just post the conversion, one of the biggest challenges was a redirection in terms of how we were thinking about manufacturing itself, right? So we were transitioning truly in earnest for the last year or so from purely a manufacturing operation to a fulfillment center concept, right? So you think about the different touch points, and part of you talked about touch points and minimizing the touch points or making these touch points transparent, right? Getting more inventory into these manufacturing locations, and now you're starting to see third-party fulfillers. You're starting to see sub-suppliers. Now, how do you expand your network, and how do you make this all encompassing? And when the pandemic hit, we needed to quickly pivot, and which we successfully did, into the mask and the shields, which required additional collaboration with the supply base, with additional space requirements, additional agility. And all of that was possible based on a platform that was much more reliable, much steadier, and much faster to process all of this information, right? So one of the plants comes up in the morning and they're on their MRP. And how long does it take to run the MRP, and how accurate is the data? So I think those were some of the considerations that the manufacturing plants were already talking to us about. And they wanted to be able to become a more efficient fulfillment center, to extend their internal supply chain, to have better collaboration with the supply base. And all of this under the context of, do not take the system away from me. So it was even difficult to get a 2-hour downtime, and we heard a lot from ARNE and yourself also, and other folks, in terms of what the downtime requirements are. The requirements were very, very stringent. So if we picked a Saturday night, and think about it from the context of global operations, you pick a Saturday night and you say, I'm going to take a 2-hour downtime. somebody is going to tell you that, no, this is not possible. You're going to impact my production schedule. You're going to impact my customer deliveries. And therefore, to be able to build functionality wherein even if the system is down for 2 hours, can I still let the plants operate? Can I still give them a view of the data? Now, some of these things were absolutely not possible with ECC, which have now become possible with the transformation that we went through.
Thank you, Mukul, and I agree with that. You mentioned about MRP, and right from the time we talked about HANA and capabilities it brought, I think almost all of us, our customers, have heard two words often: performance and real-time visibility. What does that mean for Vistaprint and for the supply chain function in general when it comes to using that in the context of S/4HANA as a platform?
Sure, that's a great question, because I think one of the key requirements is, how do I collect the information? How do I mine the tons and tons of data that I now have and make myself more productive, right? So I'll give you an example. As we are completely utilizing 100% of the warehouse spaces in the manufacturing locations, there is a decision that needs to be made in terms of where do I store what, right? So there is a certain seasonality aspect to our business too, where you can imagine the holiday times, the SKUs that we ship out or fulfill are probably a little bit more different than maybe summertime, right? So here I'm in the month of May and June, and I got to bring in my t-shirts. Now, where am I positioning those t-shirts, right? Am I putting them high up in the racks, or am I bringing them closer to the line side? And therefore there is efficiencies around that too. So I think we are starting to mine the data that is available to let the factories and the manufacturing plants know as to what the velocity of some of these SKUs have been. So there is an aspect of predictive analytics that we are starting to get into, which is very, very helpful for the businesses, right? Now they can start to think about how physical logistics matter. What are some of the things that they could be sending it to third-party fulfillers? What are some of the things that they're bringing in closer to the lines? Where do they store that? In addition to that, we are also starting to do some innovation around automated guided vehicles. So think about these very large warehouses where you now have the capability of automate picking. We are looking into voice picking. So gone are the days when an operator was running back into the warehouse and trying to sift through a line, piece of paper and go pick. So there is definitely the responsiveness aspects that are becoming more and more predominant as we mine this data that is available in S4. I think Parthiv froze.
Looks like so. So I'll add a few more things while we wait for Parthiv to join us back. As Matt and Monish both highlighted, the value of phase 0, what we call is the pre-planning, is very important. Matt talked about business partner conversion, RAR, and other things. We need to really look into those things. We spent a considerable amount of time before we actually kickstarted the project or started the project in the implementation mode. Things that we could do in ECC system, we did it. We did it with our own teams, with limited investment, and at our own pace to minimize the risk. And projects like this is all about how do you manage and mitigate your risk across the landscape, because it's not one thing that you're replacing. It's both finance, supply chain, logistics, sales. It's an ERP system. It's not a small module that is being replaced by us. So with that kind of an impact, we have to be really meticulous about the details, the value, and then how we are doing it and how incrementally we are doing it. So the process itself that we took was very different. So doing things pre-planning phase 0 is important for everyone. Do as much as you can in ECC so that you do not carry that risk into your implementation program. Think about things that you're going to need for your future. Start laying out the foundations. And I'll share one example from an architectural foundation standpoint. One of our goals was that any employee should be able to go to a Best Buy or any computer store, buy a computer, and use that laptop to log into SAP without it without them worrying about, does it need to be this different image? Do I need to be on VPN and things like those? So we enabled Fury for that architecture because we are doing things like Auth0, multi-factor authentication and things like those. You can go to a public library, type in a URL, use your credentials and MFA, and you are ping, you're in SAP. And those things are the next level game-changing things with the right security framework. Now, GUI itself has some limitations, how it interacts with the database and other things. From a product standpoint, that does not allow for that architecture to be in place. But I'm hopeful that SAP is going to turn around soon in near future to even change that architecture on the SAP GUI side. Because our goal and hope is to make our system more accessible, make it like a website where people can use it. It's easy to navigate and easy to do things.
Yep.
Thanks, Mukul, and yeah, I'm back again. Sorry for that. So Mukul, one thing, if you look at this program in hindsight, if there was one or two things that you thought you could do differently, what would those be?
Well, that's a tough question. I'm not saying we did it perfectly, but we did it near perfectly, to be honest. There are definitely certain things that I would do it differently in terms of engagement with different players in the project itself. So one of the things that always comes to my mind is SAP S4 being still a product that is being rolled out, new features, functionality being rolled out on a twice a year, every year basis. There are things that consultants do not know yet. And there are things that are not publicized or not documented enough for people to pick it up. So a better connection to a product owners in specific areas will be really helpful and will take us a long way. As an example, I think Matt specifically was asking, can we connect to a flexible hierarchy product owner? Who owns that flexible hierarchy functionality in SAP, and can we get connection to them? Because that is a strong value driver for us. Even though we implemented it, it took us a lot of time to get to that point. It was a lot of learning by ourselves. And again, there are certain feedback that we would like to provide based on our experience on that aspect. Is can we provide that feedback so that the product is more mature, more adaptable for the next customers, and honestly for us in future releases as well. So those are the things that I would definitely seek support from SAP groups as well. See how we can better partner on innovation and plan on those things while the project is in execution. And I mean, think about hardware, think about infrastructure, things that you're going to need. All of that has to be part of your phase 0 pre-planning before you sign your SAP contracts or infrastructure contracts. How are you going to execute the project? You need to have a pretty good sense and handle on those aspects before you do it, because you do not want to do 20,000 change requests every day. And that's going to result into a lot of frustrations and bad experience for everyone involved in the project.
Yeah, thank you, Mukul and Matt and Munish. I think it was a very engaging dialogue and enriching, definitely for me, and I'm sure for our audience. I want to thank you for being part of this panel discussion. And I think looking at the time, I want to invite Sushant. He's the head of our Center of Excellence to share some thoughts on the broader approach that we are taking to conversions.
Yep. Thank you, Parthiv. I hope you're able to hear me. And I hope you're able to see my screen as well. Thank you so much, ARNE, Mukul, Matthew, for a wonderful and Parthiv. Thank you so much for guiding it through. Just wanted to walk you through in terms of what we are talking for the day and how do we move ahead on the subject of system conversions, right? Looking at the time, I'm just going to run a bit faster. So coming to the core of the subject, and what I want to discuss today is when we talk about system conversions, right? What are the key factors? What is it that we're looking at as an overall requirement from it, and how do we move on from there in terms of solutioning, in terms of moving ahead on a particular project, right? So, I mean, if I have to summarize the kind of what are the challenges and the key asks that are coming from a conversion project. So in terms of business challenges, there's a constant need to innovate and keep oneself differentiated to stay ahead of the competition, right? That is where redefining the core business models is also essential to take benefit of the conversions core business model in the areas of customer finance capability or the value propositions, right? And also there's a need that the whole digital transformation, right? It should have an objective beyond a technology shift, right? You move to a digital platform, but what do you do from there, right? We had a very detailed discussion about what are the adoption paths, be it greenfield or be it a system conversion, right? Be it a selective conversion or a brownfield conversion. So there are multiple paths that are available. So if we have to narrow down on the subject of conversion and see what are the key business asks that are coming in this particular area, right? So there are few challenges and there are few typical asks addressing those challenges that are coming up front. So one of them is the modularity, right? So what is modularity? So modularity, basically, to explain, is the ask which goes beyond conversion in terms of how do I establish certain business value? How do I establish future readiness alongside my conversion programs, right? And that is where the modularity, the freedom to choose, to pick and choose from options available, right? Like the user experience enhancements or the system consolidations, or for that matter, cloud adoption. All these things can add value to business or future-proof your landscapes. And that is what the ask is coming from the modularity. The second one is that how do I predict the outcome of my program, right? A prediction of my outcome and value, both are important, right? So is there a kind of optimum t-shirt sizing available to me wherein I can just look at that and I can decide upfront in terms of this is going to be my program look like, and this is going to this is what I'm going to get at the end of the day as a commercial proposition, right? In addition, there's another ask is that how do I reduce the risk to my programs and how do I ensure my business continuity by minimizing the overall disruption to my business? So if I look at these particular key asks, right, that is where the whole definition of a conversion program that comes into picture. Right, and that is where we can articulate and we can see the kind of different benefits which multiple customers that see by undergoing a digital transformation or by following a conversion route, right? So one of the primemost factor which which was talked through the previous session is that the conversion is a value realization ahead of time, right? It is a faster way to realize the value and faster way to hit the market, right? So that is how you can accelerate the programs. So many of them, what you can see here is that there are multiple benefits that that multiple customers have kind of reaped out of their conversion programs, right? From increasing the user productivity, right, by simplification or harmonization of the processes, or also improving the user experiences, or it could be improved controlling and monitoring of OPEX or CAPEX, right, through better visibility and through better analytics kind of solutions, right? Okay. The another factor which I can talk about it is there a substantial improvement of system performances, right? So that is where the kind of what we can talk about is the month end or the period end challenges, right? That is where the most system performance is needed, and that is where many of the many of the customers have the benefit of moving on to a digital platform, moving on to an S/4HANA platform. So apart from this, the another factor to be talked about is how do we go beyond the system conversion and how do we add value to our businesses and future proofing? That would be the very interesting story to look at it. And that is where the whole TCS Convert Core offering that comes into picture. So essentially to define the outcome-driven S/4HANA conversion roadmap that is predictable and modular. There are the two key asks that we spoke about, right? And it also leverages the kind of the whole consulting-led framework of TCS Perpetuity to kind of form an end-to-end digital transformation, right, to ensure the business agility and also to accelerate the value realization. This is the primemost factor we also talked about it in terms of embarking on a conversion journey, right? And a future-ready platform that that enables continuous innovation and growth. Right. So moving ahead, what are the constituents or what is the construct of this TCS Convert Core? Right. So the Convert Core has got basic constructs in terms of three major areas that I can talk about, right? So first one to start with a built-in conversion assessment. So that particular assessment is essentially what we spoke about. It is that what is the path ahead? What is it that we need to look at it from from a conversion offering? Or we want to look at it from a conversion program. So an early proof of concept also helps to understand what are going to be the challenges and how to overcome them in the early phases itself. That is where we could just kind of take advantage of the coming times, and we could actually enable or prepare to overcome those challenges, right? It also looks at the ecosystem impact. It also talks about the value-added objectives, what we can consider to increase the business value and to improve our future readinesses, right? Okay, so that's the first part of it. The next part is we are going to talk about it is the composite conversion or the core of the particular conversion. This is where the major value addition comes into picture, is that the one part is the core conversion, while the other part talks about the modular add-ons, right? That is what I was talking about previously. So in terms of core conversion, one of the primemost factor is that it is automation enabled. So we spoke about a lot of customization that you would like to carry from your erstwhile system to the new system. That is where an automated code remediation comes into picture. The tools is like Coda that kind of help you to do it in a much automated and a much accelerated way. Similarly, multiple phases like data migration testing. So I mean, having them code enabled helps quite a lot through a factory model and leveraging the overall automation for those repetitive tasks. That is one part of it. The other part of it is business risk management. That is where I saw certain questions coming onto onto the chat windows as well in terms of the lessons learned or in terms of what is it that we can make it readily available, right? That is where multiple artifacts from the master conversion repository comes into picture, right? And there's another flavor that we bring onto it is the industry specific accelerator. Right, that is where every industry has got peculiarities. Every industry has got particular requirements. So things about mandatory changes or list of simplifications or innovations, right? So all these artifacts are customized to that particular industry segment. That is where you can bring in those accelerators, right? We also talked about ARNE and Mukul also talked about the importance of Fury. Sorry, Matthew also talked about importance of Fury, right? That is where a lot of pre-activated or pre-identified Fury content also comes as built in with this industry specific accelerator or the master conversion repository, right? That is where a lot of value addition that we bring to the table when we start with the conversion program. And it also comes with a kind of, a conversion checklist wherein you can actually look at, follow the whole program and just go tick, as in, oh yes, I have met this particular thing and I'm ready to go for the next phase. So such kind of ready artifacts also help quite a lot, right? So I spoke a lot on modular approach. And that is where I would like to once again emphasize of taking those added objectives to drive more value out of the conversion programs, be it a cloud leverage, right? Like take an example of VistaPrint. They did embark on cloud adoption. That is where making the platform future ready, and we also talked about it, how it is helping their whole global 24/7 network, right? So that is some of the things. There was a question on can we do a landscape consolidation together with conversions? To answer that, yes, both can be done as one step to save on time and also to accelerate the overall journey, right? And there are multiple kind of examples wherein we are also talking about added functionality improvements, like somewhere there are embedded components that are coming in S/4HANA that also can be leveraged alongside the conversion approach, right? So that is where this particular whole Convert Core offering comes as a bundled package to you to kind of, to kind of accelerate the overall conversion program and also give an extent of customization through the modular add-on and through the predictability of the t-shirt sizing kind of selection, right? So that is where I would like to talk about the kind of the overall quick benefits. I already talked about the accelerations. The faster time to market is one of the benefits because we talked about so much of automation, so much of ready-made content that we're bringing in. We talked about the business agility with business disruption through the industry-specific content available to us, accelerators available to us, a lot of lessons learned and the knowledge base or the POVs available through the kind of reference repositories. We also talked about the modularity and the predictability of the overall model, and that is what it summarizes into a competitive advantage to kind of be ahead of the curve, right? That is where TCS Convert Core has got a very strong positioning, and in kind of promoting TCS as the kind of right partners into your digital transformation journeys. And you can get more information. The whole thing is available on tcs.com. You can see the path out there, or you could just reach out to us, and we'll be more than happy to kind of share a lot of knowledge with you, share a lot of experiences with you, and we look forward to a successful journey along with you, partnering along with you. That is where I want to leave with a message that this system conversion is a basic foundational base, and there is a fantastic roadmap ahead throughout the digital transformation journeys. Thank you so much. I just pass it back to Alison for the Q&A sessions. Alison, over to you.
Thank you, Sushant. Appreciate that. Very insightful. And in fact, I'd like to kind of continue with your discussion. We have a couple of questions around building that business case. So if we can maybe kind of continue on that vein for just now. One of them is about the challenges of building a business case. And it'd be interesting to understand your thoughts around, why is it challenging maybe, and how does the Convert Core help to facilitate that process?
Yep, absolutely. So I mean, we did touch upon, and Parthiv did mention in terms of, though it is a system conversion project, but it is not only an IT project, it is a business project, right? That is where defining what is an outcome which we are going to get out of that particular program is very, very essential, right? That is where Convert Core will add value in terms of, I did speak about the assessment, and that is where having those additional objectives all along, right? Or alongside the program, and how do we define them and get benefit for our business is something that we define, and that is what the advantage that we will bring it on to you.
And then I know one of the challenges in a lot of these projects is validating that there was value realized. Maybe you can talk a little bit about how we help manage through that part of the process. Once you've gone live, how do you confirm or validate that you've achieved the goals you targeted?
Yep, absolutely. So I mean, there are certain goals which which are typically expected out of an S/4HANA platform. So those remain as a standard set of measures, right? In terms of there are some key DR processes. What is an improvement around that particular turnaround time of those particular processes, or there are certain system improvements parameters that we need to validate. In addition to that, what are the business objectives, right? That are particularly dear to that particular segments, and how do we measure our establishment across those processes is very, very vital, right? So challenges are in terms of how do we define this particular roadmap, and how do we make it a measurable thing. That is where we will add a lot of value to it.
Great, thank you. There's a question here for Vistaprint, and I think maybe Matthew, you talked about downtime. And the question is around how did you minimize, or what did you do to minimize downtime, or what would you have done to minimize downtime?
Yeah, so I think, as part of our phase 0, you really have to first look at database, size. You don't want to eliminate, data from your system, but because it causes other issues. But definitely having an archiving, goal. I think if you do need to, reduce your database size is super important, and it does help. Every item that you can, archive out that is not critical to my decision making that's something that you want to try to limit as much as possible. So that was the first thing. And then, depending on what you're converting to, what environment, what implementation partner you're using, the tooling, if you're unable to, after doing your analysis of your anticipated downtime using the tooling, if you're unable to stomach that, then you really need to make sure that you look at other alternatives around that. And there's various solutions that you could look into. Some of them are SAP, some of them are partner driven, and there are solutions that you can look into, and there's pros and cons to all of those, right? There's cost, for us was a primary driver of, but there's definitely other considerations you have to weigh on top of that conversion downtime. Anish, was talking about timing of what, when we would actually do it, so that we're trying to slot it into a time period in which we can take a little bit of the downtime that we were able to, that we needed. But, on top of that, you really have to look at what your alternatives are. And that's super important when you're choosing, solutions for that conversion.
Right. You mentioned the timeline, and we all know a lot of these projects are on a pretty specific or set timeline. So Mukul, you had talked about the pre-project, and I know you'd answered it in the chat window as well, about the time for pre-project. Do you want to maybe share some insights on how you fit that into maybe a shorter time window, or how can you do that more successful to make sure that the project's more successful?
Yeah, so as part of the tools, you have to run analysis on your code to identify what can you correct in your ECC system with a SQL database. Once you identify that these are the 4,000 objects out of 10,000 objects that you can fix, it's a 40% work that you can do in your ECC landscape. Now you have much longer duration to do that work because you do not have a full project online. You do not have entire consulting team online, and you're not pressuring your business partners as well, and not in the mix of the project. So you have to break that down into smaller sprints. Take that 4,000 object, break it down by function area, break it down by sprints, and make it a smaller plan that says in next 4 months or 6 months, we're going to address all of them. You look at your usage processing logs about, okay, how many of these programs are we really using? Do we need to fix, or do we need to off sunset these programs as well? So there are a lot of things of that nature that can be done to minimize the duration and help with the phase 0 effort of the project. And things that Matt said during business partner conversion, there is a lot of analysis you can do. There is a lot of readiness work that you can do, learnings that you can do even during that phase 0 as to when it comes down to implementation, how are we going to implement this and what are the exact steps, any analysis that our teams need to do. We did all of that readiness work before we started the phase 1, the migration project.
Great, thank you. And Parthiv, from your perspective, because I know we're talking about Vistaprint here as a case study, but maybe from a broader perspective of what you've seen that's benefited other clients in terms of that pre-planning phase. If you could share some of your insights there.
Yeah, I think most of the points relevant. Most important, as we said, look at and define your objectives, not necessarily only from the immediate milestone of conversion, but what is it that we need to achieve in the end? What business objectives, what capabilities do we need? The platform to deliver us. I really like the word Mukul used. In the end, you look for a platform that helps business to deliver innovation and capability. So define that early and upfront. Definitely, I would suggest to identify the simplifications, the low-hanging fruits that one can adopt on a shorter time. I think most CXOs expect and want to understand where is the return on investment, when are the first results, benefits starting to be visible. And the third is, especially for databases and systems which are complex, which are large, and where you have significant amount of integration, do proof of concepts. Do simulations before you embark on a program. That's what I would say.
Great. Thank you. While we're talking about, there's a question around TCS presence in Saudi Arabia. I don't know if maybe you want to share some more around what presence we have there and from our SAP practice.
Maybe what we can do, Alison, is take it. We are up on the hour, so we can take that offline. I've seen that, and we will connect up with the customers, shared it, and revert on that.
Okay, great. Well, I'd like to thank everybody who participated today, both our presenters from Vistaprint, ARNE from SAP, Parthiv, yourself, and Sushant. Thank you for all of your time, your insights, your thoughts. I think it was very informative for everybody. And of course, always sharing an experience in an SAP implementation is helpful, and particularly a positive and successful one. So thank you all for that. I'd like to go ahead and close now. Any questions that we didn't get to today, we will publish the materials as well as those questions and answers so that you can all contact us if you have anything further you'd like to understand better. So again, thank you everybody for joining, and have a wonderful and safe day and holiday. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.